What's up, gang? Welcome to Module 2 of the Fat to Fit Coach Foundations in Nutrition course. I hope you guys enjoyed Module 1, talking about our basics in nutrition, just some things to help you out. We're gonna go in Module 2 and talk about our macronutrients, our protein, our carbs, and our fats, okay? Just kind of to start, what are macronutrients? Well, like I just said, it's our protein, our carbohydrates, and our fats. And macronutrients make up every food that you've ever eaten, right? A different combination. Some foods are primarily protein. Some foods are primarily carbs. Some are primarily fats. Then we have things that are combinations, right? Think something like peanut butter, right? Is a combination of fat and protein. It's neither a primary fat nor a primary protein. It's probably a secondary protein. It's not a very good source, but it's got a decent amount of fat in it, right? And so something like that we just want to be cognizant of. Reading things like food labels, we want to look at the ratios of the protein, the carbs, and the fat. When we look at those numbers, what we want to look at is the grams, okay? We want to know how many grams of protein is in something, how many grams of fat is in something, and how many grams of carbohydrates are in the foods that we're eating. And to know that, we're gonna turn that food around and we're gonna look at the nutrition label, okay guys? And so those macronutrients are going to make up every food that you eat. And we're gonna talk about what each of those macronutrients is for, what it does, and why they're important, okay? We're gonna first talk about protein. What is it? Why do we need it? And what are the benefits of protein? Well, protein is the building blocks of all the tissue in your body, including muscle, hair, skin, nails, ligaments, tendons, and bone. So by getting enough protein, we're building all those things. So what that means is we need to get enough protein, right? And most of us don't get enough protein. And so that's why we're talking about it first, guys, because I want protein to be a major focus for you guys, okay? Now, like I said, protein is the building blocks of muscle. And we need to make sure we're getting enough protein. And how much protein should you be getting? Well, a good rule of thumb, guys, especially if we're trying to change the way we look, body recomposition is our goal, we want about 1 gram of protein per pound of our goal weight, okay? So whatever you weigh right now and whatever you want to weigh, whether it's 5 pounds or 10 pounds, and we can kind of decide that together when we have our talk, but we'll go and we'll kind of figure out how much weight you want to lose, and you'll eat 1 gram of protein for each pound of body weight, okay? And so for a lot of you, you know that'll come up to around the same thing. And for a lot of you, it's gonna be a struggle to get that much protein, okay? You'll find that you have not been eating that much protein and that you're gonna need to find ways to get more protein, and we'll go over all that too. How to get more, easy ways to get it in. But first, I wanna talk more about what protein actually is. What is it made of? And protein is just calories, right? But protein has 4 calories per gram. So when you turn that food label over and you read that nutrition label and it says it has 10 grams of protein in it, what that means is that that's 40 calories worth of protein. Because we always want to make sure we're keeping our calorie number where we want it. Calories are king. They are more important than macronutrients, but we just need to make sure we're keeping at or below the number depending on what our goal is. And so when we have that 10 grams of protein, that really means there's 40 calories from protein in that food. Some of the benefits of protein, some of the things you're gonna find that are gonna be helpful is that protein is really satiating. It means it keeps you full, okay? More so than fat or carbs. You might find like sometimes you just eat like, you know, some carbs no matter how much and it feels like it went right through you. Well, that's because protein is tougher for your body to break down, and so it has to work a little bit harder, and so it feels a little bit fuller. Your body feels a little bit fuller, maybe not you, but your body will feel fuller and then give you the response of acting as if you ate more food. So again, just another reason why it's so important that we make sure we're really focusing on increasing our protein and getting enough protein when we're trying to body recomp, okay? Another benefit of protein is going to be, like I said, it takes your body a lot of energy to burn protein, and so we're gonna burn, you know, some more calories eating protein, not enough to make a huge difference, but if you're really, again, focusing on increasing your protein, you're gonna burn a little bit more calories, and everything counts, guys. You know, all those extra little steps, all that extra activity, all those few calories here and there, those few bites here and there. Those are the things that add up over the course of months and years and add that extra 5 or 10 pounds that we see at the end of the year. Now I want to talk about what are protein sources. What are some primary protein sources, okay? And I talk about primary protein sources because there's some sources of protein that may have a lot of fat in them. Think something like peanut butter has protein, but it's got a lot of fat. Or a fatty cut of meat may have a lot of protein, but it also has a lot of fat. So we want to keep these things in consideration, because if we have too much fat, we're going to go over our calories. And again, calories are king. When we talk about different types of protein sources, we have our meat, chicken, beef, pork, all these things are great. And you should get a variety of them because they all contain different nutrients, different amino acids, and it's good to eat a balanced diet. You never want to just eat the same things all the time. You always want to make sure you're getting a variety of different foods. It's only going to help. Something like, say, low-fat dairy is another great primary source of protein. Low in fat, low in carbs, and high in protein. It's something that we don't eat enough of. In fact, the fitness industry, the diet culture right now would have you think that dairy is bad for you, that dairy is harmful. In fact, there's been countless studies on dairy that show that it reduces heart disease, it lowers cholesterol, all these great benefits for overall health, right? And not only that, but it contains a ton of protein, okay? And so some of my favorite low-fat dairy sources are cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, even low-fat cheeses, guys. I know I love cheese. I know some of you absolutely love cheese. Well, you can still lose weight. You can still change the way you look and have those things, right? You just have to make some different choices. So maybe going for that reduced fat version over the full fat version, right? So looking for things, again, reading those food labels, looking for things to make sure that it's a primary protein source and that there's not some sneaky fat or some sneaky carbs in there, okay? So now that you guys kind of have an idea of what protein is, what it does in your body, kind of how much you need, and some of the foods that contain protein, you guys can better understand next time you kind of go grocery shopping or you're deciding what to eat, kind of making better choices for that sustainable weight loss, for that sustainable body recomp, okay? After protein, the next macronutrient I want to talk about, guys, is carbohydrates, okay? What are the benefits? Why do we need them? And what are they, okay? Well, just like protein, carbohydrates contain 4 calories per gram. So again, what that means, if you flip that food label over and you read and you see it has 20 grams of carbohydrates, that means that that 20 grams of carbohydrates equals 80 calories. And again, we want to make sure we're tracking those calories. Calories are king. We need to make sure we're hitting that number correctly. With our carbs, what are some of the benefits of carbs? Because chances are, when you think carbs, you probably have a negative connotation. You probably think, oh no, carbs are gonna make me fat. Oh no, I can't have carbs at certain times. I can't have them before bed. And oh no, like carbs are bad, right? And that's kind of the general consensus that the fitness industry and the diet culture would like you to believe, that carbs are bad, right? Well, I have news for you guys. Carbs are not bad. In fact, they're delicious. Carbs are my absolute favorite, right? Some of the benefits of carbs, guys, they fill you up, right? They're voluminous. Think rice, pasta, like all these things. You can have much more volume than you can something fatty like oil or avocado, right? You can't have a ton of that stuff because it's very calorically dense, whereas carbs are not. They're very calorically voluminous. And so we want to eat as much food volume as we can when we're trying to change the way we look, because it's going to help keep us full. And if we're feeling full, we're not going to have cravings. Our body is going to be much happier. We're going to be much closer to homeostasis, even though we're not giving it as much as it needs. But we want to really make sure, guys, that we're filling up, and carbs are just a great way to do that, okay? Another benefit of carbs is they are anti-catabolic. And what that means, guys, is that while protein is anabolic, meaning it builds muscle, carbohydrates are anti-catabolic, meaning it prevents the loss of muscle, okay? When you have those carbohydrates in your diet, you're preventing your body from because remember, we're not giving our body enough, right? If we're trying to lose fat, lose weight, we want to give our body less than it needs. And so we want to make sure that the stuff we are giving it is really going to help spare that muscle, preserve the muscle that we have, because we want to hang on to every little bit of muscle we have, guys. It's precious. It's very hard to build muscle, and we don't want to just diet it into oblivion. So if you just find yourself losing weight super quickly, chances are it's not just fat, it's also muscle. And by eating enough carbs, which are anti-catabolic, we can kind of circumvent that degradation of muscle in our body. So kind of going back to this negative connotation we have with carbs, I wanted to talk about some carb myths with you guys, okay? A lot of you have probably, again, heard that carbs are bad, or that you can't eat carbs at certain times, right? Perhaps that you shouldn't eat carbs before bed. Well, there's no science behind that, guys. It's not reality. Our body is burning calories all the time. We want to look at, how many calories we're having on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, right? Because our body is constantly burning calories. And so there's going to be times where you're under your calories and you're a little bit over, and it all equals out, right? If you've ever found that over the course of like a year or so, you never really changed weight, you just kind of stayed up. You might have went up 5 pounds, went down 5 pounds, but you just kind of stayed the same weight all year. That means you're just at maintenance, you're just cruising along, and your body's just getting as much as it needs, right? When we talk about the times you're supposed to eat, it really comes down to what is best for you. So some of you might find that having some carbs before bed helps you sleep better. And remember, we talked about tracking our sleep and how important sleep quality is when we want to lose weight, when we want to burn fat. And so if you're not able to sleep and eating some carbs helps you sleep better and improves that sleep quality, overall, we're going to be in a better place to burn fat quicker, okay? So all comes down to preference, all right? Another thing I want to talk about is what are carb sources, because this is another kind of myth, right? We all think like carbs, donuts, pizza, pancakes, pies, things like these we think of as carbs, when really those are hyper palatable foods, guys. Pastas with creamy sauces on them, hyper palatable. They're not carb sources, right? Pasta is a carb source, and if you had some kind of low fat, sauce on top of it, then yes, that would be a primary carb source. However, when you load it with the creamy sauces, all of a sudden it becomes a primary carb source and a primary fat source, and now we have a hyper palatable food. And what hyper palatable foods are, guys, is foods that are really just super yummy. Anything you can think of that you're like, wow, that is super yummy, I could eat that all day. Those are hyper palatable foods. Your pizza, the things that are combinations of fat, carbs, salt, sugar, things like ice cream, pies, cakes, things like that. If there's anything you guys want to avoid, or I should say eat in moderation, because if you really love something, who am I to tell you not to have it, right? And who are you to tell you not to have it? And who are you to let the fitness industry and the diet culture tell you not to have it, right? But it's our responsibility to have the right amount, and we have to know that things like hyperpalatable foods are very calorically dense, meaning they contain a lot of calories in a small amount of food. That's why we talked about eating a lot of volume with our carbs. Well, the opposite is true of hyperpalatable foods, and we need to really make sure that we're moderating them. So the problem isn't that you're having pizza. The problem isn't that you're having donuts. The problem is that you're having too much of those things. And of course, things like that you can't have as much of as, say, potatoes or rice. You can have a lot more of that, right? And stay much fuller. And that's kind of the trade-off you have to ask yourself. Am I willing to sacrifice some taste to maybe feel fuller? Or maybe, hey, I want to indulge. I want to feel like I, had something yummy, and I'm willing to not have as much of it and maybe feel a little bit hungry in the process. And that's totally your guys' choice. And that's what this course is about. That's what these 7 modules are about, guys, is empowering you to make your dietary choices and create your own diet, okay? So what are our carb sources? What are our primary sources of carbs? Well, if we go to the grocery store, we're gonna look at things like fruits, vegetables. Those are all carb sources, right? Those are carb sources we can have more volume of. Then we go into things like rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, white potatoes. It's all the same. It all comes down to preference, what you like the most. There's no difference health-wise. We just have to look at those calories and how many grams of carbs are in it, right? You have things that you can have a little bit more of, maybe not as much as that fruit. Fun fact, guys, you can eat like 2 pounds of watermelon is like 100 calories. It's like nothing, right? It's just all water. And so that's a ton of food for you're not going to gain weight if you're not eating too much, right? If you're giving your body less than it needs, no matter how much food it is. Think about a gorilla, right? Gorillas eat like 10,000 tons of greens a day, and they have to do that. They have to eat so much food volume because there's not a lot of nutrient density in greens, right? And so really making sure that you're not just eating everything, you're really focusing in on those primary carb sources like potatoes, like fruits, like vegetables. And then we kind of move into our secondary carb sources like breads, pastas that are primarily carbs, but they have a little bit of fat in them, right? And that's when it becomes really important, guys, to read your food labels when you're at the grocery store. Next time you go to the grocery store, pick up a couple different brands of white bread. Look at the numbers. Look at how many grams a serving is, so how much does that piece of bread weigh? It's probably about 56 grams or 36 grams, depending on the size. And then look at the numbers and compare the numbers. Is the protein the same, the fat the same, and the carbs the same? And you'll find that no, they're not. They're all going to vary slightly. And when we're talking about changing the way we look, we want to change every little number can matter, right? And so maybe if you get some bread that say has 2.5 grams of fat per slice versus bread that has 1 gram of fat per slice, you're able to eat more of another food that you love during the day because you've cut 30 or 40 calories worth of fat that you didn't even realize was there. And so once we kind of talk about breads and stuff, then we go into our foods that I wouldn't really even call carbs anymore, things like cookies, cakes, pizza, ice cream, all this stuff. And those, again, are really just hyper palatable foods. So really focus on sticking to those fruits, vegetables, potatoes, rice, pasta, and different kinds of whole wheat breads, okay, guys? That pretty much wraps up all the different carb sources you guys are gonna need to know. And that wraps up carbs, okay? So again, some of the benefits, really filling, they're anti-catabolic, and they're super yummy, guys. So the third and final macronutrient I'll be talking to you guys about is fat. Fat is sneaky, but it is necessary, okay? Fat is one of these very tricky things, and I'm gonna tell you guys right now, fat is the reason you cannot change the way you look and look the way you want, okay? Because it is sneaky, it's hidden in everywhere. Things are yummy because there's fat added to them. What kind of fat that is, it kind of depends, right? And we'll go into what fat is and the different kinds of fat. So we have animal fats like saturated fat and monosaturated fat. And those things are good. We need that saturated fat, right? It creates cholesterol in our body that helps regulate our hormones. But saturated fat we want to eat in moderation because too much of it can cause cancer, it can cause plaque to build up in our arteries, right? And so that's just one of those things we want to eat in moderation. So think of things like beef, red meat, things like that. We really have saturated fat, and we want to make sure that we are eating those in moderation. Then we have fats from plants, okay? So we have first polyunsaturated fats, and what that really means is just that there's 3 saccharides in that chemical chain, nothing you guys actually need to know. What you do need to know is that polyunsaturated fats are things like canola oil, grapeseed oil. A lot of oils from plants are polyunsaturated, and these are not bad fats, but fats we want to avoid, fats we don't need. They really have no benefit in our body, right? And so the real benefit comes from the fact that they're cheap and that they're easy to cook with. So you find these polyunsaturated fats in a lot of restaurant food. You'll find peanut oil, corn oil, all these different linseed oil, all these different oils that just add calories, right? And again, fat is sneaky. It's not something you can really see, right? You can't see the fat on the French fries you're eating. Again, you probably just think of French fries as carbs, right? But they probably have more calories from fat because unlike carbs and protein, fat has 9 calories per gram. That's double the amount of calories than a gram of protein or carbohydrates has. And what that means is they're really, really easy to overdo. And again, because they're not voluminous, they don't take up a lot of space, we don't visually see them. And when we don't visually see things, sometimes we are able to just forget they're even there, right? And so this becomes very detrimental when you think you're eating really well, you think you're on track, but you just can't seem to make any actual changes. And chances are you're getting too much fat and you're not even realizing it, okay? Something like drizzling the pan with olive oil for 3 seconds versus 5 seconds could easily be 200 or 300 calories depending on how long that pour is. So some ways we can circumvent that, guys, is by using things like cooking sprays, right? There's still calories in those, it's still fat. We're regulating the distribution method, right? And so one of the ways to help you stay away from those sneaky fats and avoid those sneaky fats is changing the distribution method. So making sure that if you're eating guacamole, that those little individual packs you get from Trader Joe's is great because you can't eat more than the amount that is in there unless you go get another one, right? But things like that help to regulate our distribution of fat. And the more you can regulate distribution of fat, the more we're gonna avoid it and the less excess we're going to get. Because when it comes to fat, guys, more is not better, okay? We don't need more fat. I hear a lot of this, fat is essential. Yes, we need it for our hormone function, okay? We have to have it, especially females. Fat is very important in your guys' diet for your menstrual cycle, regulating all your hormones, and can definitely play into your ability to change the way you look. But we don't need more of it. We don't need excess. We need the right amount. So what is the right amount of fat, guys? Well, the RDA recommended value for fat is about 20 to 30% of your total daily calories. So what that means is if you eat 2,000 calories a day, and let's go on the low end, let's take 20%, right? You have 20% of your total daily calories from fat. That's 400 calories you're going to be getting from fat a day. And because we know that fat has 9 calories per gram, if we divide 9 by 400, we get like 55-ish something. That could be completely wrong. If it is, let me know. If not, if I'm right, Rain Man over here. 55 of our macros should come from fat, right? And to hit that RDA value. Now, you can go up and down in that range as much as you want, in that 20 to 30% range, but there's no benefit to going over, guys, okay? So going into ketosis, if you've heard of keto before, is not going to help you burn more fat, right? There's no science behind ketosis, burning more fat, besides anything other than just giving your body less than it needs, right? That calories in, calories out. Always going back to that. And that's what I want you guys to know about fat. It's sneaky, it's essential, it's in all the yummy foods you eat, and you really need to watch it, okay? So I want you guys to really focus on when you read your nutrition labels, looking at how much fat is in things. You would be surprised. Next time you go to the grocery store, just pick up some random items, some processed foods. Maybe pick up, for example, a packet of Uncle Ben's rice, and you'll find that there's extra fat in there. Why? There's not fat in rice if you cook it at home, not unless you add butter to it or oil. And that's what some companies are gonna do, is add fats to things to make them taste better. So make sure you guys are being aware, because fats are so sneaky. And with that, guys, we've covered our macronutrients, our protein, our carbohydrates, and our fats. You guys should now know what each of those kind of does, why you need it, some of the benefits of those, and some of the primary sources you can go to eat those foods and to get those nutrients, okay? So with that, guys, we're wrapping up Module 2, macronutrients. I hope you guys enjoyed and you learned a ton. Next, we're gonna move on to Module 3, calculating our macros.